Okay, moving on to the next segment of today's show. I wanted to talk a little bit about the NFL, Roger Goodell, and really the way the scheduling of this Ravens-Steeler game that was actually supposed to be originally played on Thanksgiving night. I wanted to talk about why I am not in agreement of how the NFL handled the situation, and I'll start here. The Ravens players had a players-only meeting on Tuesday to express concern about playing the game on Tuesday night because they insisted in having an extra day of practice. And here's my thing, right? If that is the reason why this game was moved 24 hours before kickoff and moved back another 24 hours in advance, I don't think that's fair. The part of this where health and safety come in is first. I get it. But I think that's secondary just to get a day off to get a game plan in for the Ravens when Robert Griffin III is going to be your quarterback, which I also think means Harbaugh was really the one behind this players-only meeting because he was really trying to force the NFL to give in to what the Ravens wanted, which was more time. And if you believe it was about the practice, which I do, then it makes sense that the coaches were also behind this quote-unquote players-only meeting, especially when only one Raven player on Monday tested positive and he was on IR. I believe the Ravens have lost the right to complain about being put at a competitive disadvantage because whose fault is it that the Ravens are in this situation? Oh yeah, the Ravens, because their meathead strength and conditioning coach wasn't smart enough to put on a mask while around many players, and the Ravens that ultimately caused within their organization a COVID-19 outbreak, which obviously in 2020 is the one thing that you should be trying to avoid at all costs. And I do think you could kind of look at it from the same perspective that I agreed with the NFL and the way they handled the situation with the Denver Broncos. The Broncos did not have a plan B. In the quarterback room, those guys weren't wearing a mask, and they deserved what happened to them on Sunday because the NFL should not have bended over for the Denver Broncos because they screwed up. If the Ravens really wanted extra days of practice to get ready for the Steelers, then their strength and conditioning coach should have been wearing a mask because then the COVID outbreak would not have happened. I believe that if the NFL wanted to make an example of the Denver Broncos, and that's what a lot of people are saying, right? The Denver Broncos had 4 quarterbacks with the coronavirus or 1 quarterback with the virus and other 3 that had to sit out due to contract tracing. I believe if you're making the argument that, okay, the Tennessee Titans were not punished after what happened to them early in the season, and now during cold and flu season, there are multiple teams across the league where there are outbreaks, and if we see teams breaking the rules, it doesn't matter. We want teams to learn from the Denver Broncos. They're a team that isn't really in playoff contention right now, and we want the Denver Broncos to show the rest of the league what could really happen when you don't take our COVID protocols in the middle of this pandemic seriously. And I totally understand if that was where they were coming from. Okay, I get it. The Broncos screwed up. But if that's really the case, I feel like you should have done the same thing with the Ravens, and you really should have told the Broncos, look, if you're upset about us not postponing your game, you have no one to blame but yourself because you were not following protocols and wearing a mask. Here's another question I have for you guys. What is a bigger competitive disadvantage? Is it not having practice time like the Ravens, but at least having your backup quarterback still in the game? I know we can make fun of RG3 all we want, and we could say that the Ravens are pretty unlikely to go into Heinz Field and beat the Steelers with RG3, their backup quarterback, getting the majority of the reps. But at the same time, I think that I would still sit here and make the argument that at least having your backup quarterback in the game and some players there is still at least better than not having a quarterback on your roster and being so desperate, like the Denver Broncos were, that they actually sat here and asked an assistant coach to suit up. Which situation is worse, guys? Because I got to be honest with you. I think it's the Broncos, and it's not even close. If you want to say the Ravens just had more positive tests, okay, but where is the leadership by the NFL? Where is the consistency by the NFL? I think the NFL not only sat here and let the Baltimore Ravens set a very dangerous precedent in terms of the playoffs and the future of the season going forward, but at the same time, I just think they really gave in to the Ravens and their request. And if you said the Ravens just had more positive tests on Monday and Sunday, okay, I get it. If you wanted to move the game in that case, that's fine. But it's not like the number of positive cases on the Ravens has grown exponentially in the last couple of days. It's just known that there's an outbreak, and I believe that right now it's pretty obvious which players are going to be suiting up for the Ravens on Wednesday and not. And I feel like if you want to say the Ravens had more positive tests, okay, but this is where the lack of leadership for the NFL really comes into play, and this is my issue. I said it after the Titans. Tuesday should have been the day during the week that, week 5, week 6, when the Titans situation happened and the Cam Newton and the Patriots situation happened before their game against the Kansas City Chiefs. I believe the NFL should have said Tuesday is the cutoff. If you can't play Tuesday, then it's a forfeit, or else you have to just have a team out on the field ready to go by Tuesday. Let's think about this for a second, guys. The NFL is moving this game back basically a week. That cannot happen. The fact that this game hasn't been played already, it's ridiculous. And my issue here is both the Broncos and Ravens did this to themselves, and this game was really supposed to be on Thanksgiving Day. That's a while ago now, and for me, that's my biggest problem. How many times also did the Tennessee Titans practice before they beat the Bills? How much are the Ravens actually going to practice here? For an hour? And what exactly are they going to get done? And once again, I totally understand the people that are complaining about the Steelers going on Twitter and whining and saying, first we get screwed over because of the Titans, and then we get screwed over because of the Ravens. And there are a lot of people saying, stop whining. What are you doing? We're in the middle of a pandemic. People have it so much worse than you. And I get it. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and blame the Steelers because everything they're saying, I agree with. In week 4, their game got moved against the Tennessee Titans, and the Steelers practiced for that game about half the week, and now their bye week is gone. Their bye week happened already, and they spent it practicing for a game against the Tennessee Titans. And now, when the Baltimore Ravens strength coach gets in trouble for not wearing a mask and the Ravens aren't, ready to play, you're going to penalize the Steelers again because now the Ravens have more time to game plan. They have J.K. Dobbins and Mark Ingram back who are going to play. And let's not forget this, guys. The Baltimore Ravens, the last football game they played was against the Tennessee Titans 2 Sundays ago. If the game would have happened on time, then the Pittsburgh Steelers would have caught the Baltimore Ravens coming off a physically imposing game against the Tennessee Titans where Derrick Henry just ran all over them. Now, the Steelers are going to get a Ravens team that is much more well-refreshed. They're ready to go, and the Steelers didn't do anything wrong, and both of their games against Baltimore and Washington are both going to be getting moved because of things they had absolutely nothing to do with, and that is my issue in this situation. I've tried to avoid complaining about the Steelers being screwed, and I get it, it's a pandemic. But this is a pandemic is not a good enough answer for me as to why the Steelers are being treated unfairly. We know this is a pandemic. The NFL leadership just has to be better. Why are you making the Broncos play and the Ravens not? Because there was an outbreak? Okay, I get it, but then the game should have been played Sunday after a while because it was proven that no more Ravens were going to test positive. It was also proven by medical experts that the virus doesn't spread throughout on-the-field contact, and over the last 2 or 3 days, the only Ravens that have tested positive were players that were on the injury report. And after a while, the NFL players have realized that they opted into the season for a reason. They have to realize that this virus is here, and if you want, you should be wearing a mask. You should be practicing safe social distancing, unlike the Denver Broncos and their quarterback situation. But at the same time, there are situations in 2020 here where you just cannot avoid this virus, and after a while, it inevitably is going to hit you. And that's not what happened here with the Broncos and the Ravens. I like the way Roger Goodell made the Denver Broncos play and said it's not our fault that your quarterbacks weren't following the rules. I just wish he could have been a little more consistent with it when it came to the Baltimore Ravens. And I actually also really like how Vic Fangio called out the Denver Broncos quarterbacks. I respect that. A man with dignity. And Drew Lock said it himself, that this is going to be something he learns from. And why aren't we hearing anything from the Ravens? We don't even know who the strength and conditioning coach was that screwed up. And I hate to be calling for people's jobs on this show, but I hate to say it, this is a guy that should not be with the Ravens anymore. He has caused a lot of trouble for the team because he wasn't following the proper NFL protocols. This whole season, the NFL has been really stressing the idea of the virtual meetings and doing stuff different, and those things could work effectively. And that's what I think the Baltimore Ravens in this situation should have been forced to do.